All right, let's dive right into today's explainer. We are breaking down what is absolutely, without a doubt, the most critical success factor in any corporate turnaround. We're talking about Pillar 1, financial health, which is basically the corporate bloodstream.
This whole explainer really rests on this brilliant medical metaphor from Dr. Mike Ting. He says cash flow is your bloodstream, keep it circulating. Think about it. Just like a critically ill patient desperately needs oxygen, an ailing company's immediate, non-negotiable lifeline is cash. A business can actually limp along unprofitably for years, but the second liquidity fails, the business literally dies in weeks.
So, when a company is in deep trouble, we have to immediately stop asking historical, backward-looking questions like, hey, how did we perform last quarter? Who cares? Instead, we need to ask one brutal, terrifying survival question. Will we be alive in 13 weeks? Because surprisingly, most companies don't actually die from a lack of profit. They die from bad timing. The real electrocardiogram of your business isn't the glossy annual report. It's the rolling 13-week cash flow forecast.
Now, taking a look at the 8 critical success factors for a turnaround. Obviously, things like operational excellence and culture are important, but we are zeroing in entirely on Pillar 1 today. Because if you neglect financial health, the patient dies on the operating table.
When a company faces a massive cash crunch or insolvency is staring you right in the face, you enter Phase 1, corporate surgery. This is pure crisis intervention. Welcome to the emergency room. Your immediate goal here isn't long-term growth or building brand equity. Absolutely not. It is strictly about stopping the acute financial bleeding, plugging the holes, and keeping the patient stable. The surgical toolkit required for this ER phase relies on what we call the 4 C's. First up, communication. You have to be totally transparent, engaging your staff and your creditors. Second, cost control. This means enacting zero-based budgeting to aggressively slash the fat. Third is cash flow, which is all about establishing positive operating cash just to buy yourself some time. And finally, concentration. You need laser focus entirely on your core competencies. Drop everything else.
To actually execute this, you don't just guess. You follow a very specific clinical escalation path. It starts with a pulse check, moves to a blood test, and finishes in the rehab gym.
So, step 1. Before you go out and burn your incredibly scarce capital on expensive external consultants, you run a quick pulse check at fiscaladvisory.org. This is an 8-minute rapid triage simulator built specifically for busy executives. It instantly reads your starting conditions and flags those critical early warning symptoms, like say, if your cash reserves are currently measured in weeks instead of months. It does this through a super structured 6-question assessment. It mathematically analyzes things like your cash runway, how heavily you're relying on overdrafts, your profit margins, and where your revenue's concentrated. From that, the AI immediately spits out your starting liquidity, growth, and stability scores. It's exactly like a doctor checking your vital signs the exact second you walk into a clinic.
But here is the golden rule you have to remember. If that 8-minute rapid pulse check gives you an abnormal reading, like maybe a flashing red warning on your trade facility utilization, you must escalate immediately. You go straight from that quick triage into the deep dive blood panel.
And that brings us right to the absolute heart of the Corporate Turnaround Center, which is accountingfinancialcenter.com. This is your in-depth diagnostic hub. It runs rigorous AI-driven assessments across your profit and loss, your balance sheet, and your cash flow statements to accurately diagnose exactly how deep your solvency challenges really go.
The main engine powering this particular blood test is the legendary Altman Z-score. Now, this isn't just a basic health check. It's a validated statistical screen that combines 5 different financial ratios into one single number. And it is incredibly accurate at predicting the likelihood of bankruptcy up to 2 entire years before it actually happens. It tells you definitively, are you in the safe zone, the gray zone, or the distress zone? It literally prevents a fatal corporate heart attack before you even feel the chest pain.
The user journey here is just incredibly seamless. The AI figures out the correct Z-score variant based on your specific company type and then totally stress tests your cash. The result? You get a highly detailed, tailored recovery plan and a working capital resilience score that is actually benchmarked directly against your industry peers. Okay, so once the patient is finally stabilized, we move to step 3, the rehab gym, which is hosted at cashflowadvisory.org. This ties right back into turnaround principle 18, which is rehearse before you live it. Listen, you want to make your catastrophic mistakes in a simulation where they are completely free, right? Not in the real-world operating theater where those exact same mistakes are fatal. This simulator is purpose-built for SME operators. It forces you to navigate a brutal 12-week operating period without putting a single real dollar at risk. You're going to face GST deadlines colliding head-on with payroll. You'll deal with sudden customer defaults, supplier disputes, and even tricky seasonal cash flow modifiers like Chinese New Year or Ramadan. You basically play out your industry's absolute worst-case scenario over and over until surviving it just becomes muscle memory.
So what is the big takeaway from all of this? Well, here is your immediate clinical action plan. Tonight, go run the 8-minute pulse check at fiscaladvisory.org. Seriously, it takes 8 minutes. Sometime this week, build your 13-week forecast and run your statements through the Accounting Financial Center to get your Z-score. And by the end of this month, you need to sit down with your financial controller and rehearse your worst possible quarter in the cash flow simulator.
I want to leave you with this final, truly provocative thought from the source material. Revenue is a story, cash is a date. You can spin a fantastic story about your sales pipeline and your growing market share, but I promise you, if you miss the date your cash runs out, the story ends. Make sure your company lives to tell its story by never, ever losing sight of that date. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and seriously, go get to work on that pulse check.